Well, I'm very happy to be back. And sure how this is going. Oh, there we go. So tonight there's a topic of death and rebirth, or death and dying, and it's a very short night tonight. So sometimes I do this topic in 10-day retreats. So there's a lot of meditation on death and dying, and we kind of take our time through the different points. So what I'd like to do is give you a little bit in the beginning the general, what traditionally our tradition talks about death and dying, and some ways to meditate on death and dying, to talk about that. And then I want to talk about the practical reality of getting yourself ready like that. So let's take a moment to slowly allow ourselves to be here in the space. You can just close your eyes for a moment. And as you breathe in, imagine space coming into your mind, opening your heart, and just exhale the distraction and all the busyness of the day. Just bringing yourself more and more here quietly into this space. And just consider why you want to hear some things about death and dying right now. What's your purpose, in a sense, for being here? And in this particular Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we do focus on death at times. We learn various meditations on death. So not to bring our mind down and make us sad, even though sometimes it does, thinking about it, but actually to motivate our practice. To motivate our practice. So by considering impermanence and death, and at least a little bit every day, then the chances are you may be able to direct your awareness in a path of not wasting time, not being as lazy, not putting off the things you really want to make time for that are valuable to you, getting to them now. So it really can liven up your spiritual practice. Not to paralyze you, not to make you afraid, to actually dissolve some of the fear when we are more familiar with what happens. So this can actually benefit our practice. And just think for a moment, if it can, could we get ourselves to this place of full awakening, to become Buddhas? That's a means to get somewhere in our tradition, because the end result is to benefit all living beings. To benefit all living beings. But to do it perfectly, you need to be a Buddha. So in our tradition, we're very focused and motivated in that way. So take a moment right now to set your motivation for this evening. Putting your mind in as positive a place as possible. Please relax. Slowly open your eyes. So initially when we start talking about this topic traditionally, there are 6 circumstances, what they say, why it is not beneficial to not think about death. And they talk about the benefits of thinking about death, and there's 6 detriments of not thinking about death during your living time. Okay, and they're related. So for instance, they'll say, why is it positive to think about death? Because you will remember your practice. You'll do your practice, you'll have a good practice. But they also say 3 of the 6 reasons are it's important in the beginning, middle, and the end. And so that means the beginning, middle, and end of your practice, like as you mature your practice and things like that. And certainly in the end of your practice is when you're dying. And that's the thing that's going to show up. How's my spiritual practice? Where's my mind? Right? But you can also say in the beginning, middle, and end of your life. So what happens is the beginning of life, when we're kids, when we're younger, we never think we're going to die. So there's really no point thinking about it. And you don't necessarily get to your practice because you have later to deal with it. In the middle of life, sometimes we are building careers, spending a lot of time working, raising children, paying for our houses, things like that. And it's hard to fit it in because we're so busy and active. And then at the end of the life, obviously it's a big support, and hopefully we'll have more time if we live that long, right? So disadvantages that come from not thinking about death are that what happens, and some of you can relate to this, I don't think about the Dharma. All these other things in life are happening first, and the Dharma's kind of like later. Maybe number 2 is maybe I think about the Dharma, but then I end up not really practicing. I put it off till later. I have later. When I retire, I hear people say, what happens if you die before you retire? Kind of missed an opportunity, right? And then what happens is if you do remember Dharma and you practice, you don't practice very well. Like that. And so one of the unfortunate results of not ever reflecting on your death is you may die with some regrets. And then obviously the advantage of thinking about it during your life is you may die with no regrets, which can be really peaceful. So those are just some things traditionally you think about of why is it important, why do I need to think about it? But then what we do is, in our tradition we have a 9-point death meditation. This is very traditional, the basic way to meditate on death, 9-point death meditation. Of this 9 points, there's 3 headings, 3 roots, they're called. And under each root, there's 3 reasonings, and that leads you to 3 resolutions. You can think of it like that. So the 3 roots, the 3 main headings are that death is certain. Number 2 is the time of death is uncertain. And number 3 is the only thing that benefits you at the death time is your Dharma practice. And I would even say some sort of spiritual practice that you feel is uplifting, like that is authentic and uplifting. Okay. So number 1, what's under this main heading, the 3 reasons? Death is certain is the main heading. So there are 3 different situations you will analytically go through in meditation when you want to meditate on them, because intellectually, just looking around the room, I think we got it, that everybody in here, I think, knows you're going to die. Is there anybody here that isn't sure? I think we have it here. We get that. But you don't have it here. So if you had it here, you may be living differently. So what we're trying to do with this analytical meditation on these points, these 9 points, is to move that intellectual understanding from here to here until you have an experiential realization where you know you're going to die. That changes everything. Okay? So under death is certain, we would explore number one reasoning is everybody dies. Everybody dies. But in the meditation, what you want to do is it's nice first to read some of the death section in our basic Lam Rim books. Lam Rim is our underlying philosophy. Lam means path. Rim, stages or steps on the path. So this means it's a gradual process to study the topics of the philosophy, and then it's not enough to study them and read about them. You want to analytically meditate on them so that one day I know I'm going to die. One day, if I want to go back to the first part of the Lam Rim, I know I have a precious human life. I can really use it for great meaning. It wakes me up every day and it's fantastic, and I don't want to waste this time because it's quite rare. So from each of those topics, that's another topic, you slowly go through with the Lam Rim book to understand what are the main points you should meditate on. And if you outline that effectively on your own, you start really learning the Lam Rim. I could give you outlines and say, here's what you need to meditate. Better for you to go through and kind of be like, I think this is the essence of this section. So when we get to death and dying, part of it is the 9-point death meditation. You want to know those points really well. Okay? Then what you do if you say, number one, reasoning, everybody dies. So I've already got some support from the book. I've read in the book about this, like ways to think about it. For instance, you want to reflect in your meditation that I think sometimes of the most creative beings on the planet, like Mozart, or, he died. He was pretty amazing, but he still died, right? I think of powerful people, like somebody on the planet, not me, someone else on the planet could push a button and destroy the planet, let's say, nuclear war, okay? But those people die. Like they can do something that powerful, but they can't stop death. So you want to reflect on this deeply, like really go through, like for me, Einstein was supposedly a genius. Stephen Hawking, who more recently died, right? They died. So they couldn't figure it out. But I'm going to escape death? So this is how you slowly go, well, they died, he died. So you want to go through maybe famous people, go through the most artistic. I read about people that walked on the moon. That's pretty extraordinary. They died. They didn't figure out a way out of that. So it's like you realize, so you're going to use scriptural references from the book, something you read in the book. Maybe there's a quote you liked. You apply that in you're sitting there, you're like, and that quote, and that, you can reflect on the quote, go through it in your mind. Okay. You might use something you heard in a class. Some line came through from a teacher and you're like, I remember that. Yeah, everybody dies. I'm definitely, and you can think, I am definitely going to die. Over and over. But whatever time you have, 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day, you do get sad a little bit at times, and that means it's working. But it also, you're a little bit like, I can't waste time because I'm going to die. But you go through these slowly. Then use some life experience. Okay, use life experience. How many people do you know personally who've died? Who's the oldest person you know? I think about this a minute. Who's the oldest person I know? Like, most people don't get past 90. Like that's soon. So you're slowly in this mode, and then the oldest person, and then sometimes I think about if I'm teaching this in a retreat, leading this in a retreat, so just looking around the room right now, in 100 years, everyone in this room will be gone. I'm pretty sure we'll all be gone. Yeah. So you start thinking, whoa, that's different. Ouch. Yeah, ouch. Yeah, it's like, okay, it'll be finished, that kind of thing. So let it sink in here. When it gets to a juicy spot where you really are like, I'm gonna die. I am gonna die. Then you want to take your concentration and apply it to that experience, that juicy feeling you're having, to deepen the experience. And that's how we combine analytical meditation with more of a concentration meditation, a stabilizing meditation like Shine. Shine is calm, abiding. Calm, abiding. You place your mind on an object, keep it there calmly. And that's normally what we think of as meditation. But in our tradition, we also have analytical, and I found it very powerful for the mind. That sometimes I come back on this number one point. The Buddha died. Right? So Jesus died, Mother Teresa died, John Paul II died. These were pretty special people. They died. The Buddha died. But I'm immune from this situation. So the Buddha died, and I think I'm not going to die. So these are ways you start to realize, like, it's coming. Point number one, everybody dies. Number two, under death is certain. Number two, every moment you're closer to death. Every moment you're closer to death. So, sorry, yes. So, on some level, I sometimes visualize in this meditation, and you're welcome to get creative with your meditations. You know, we suggest stuff, we have ways, but eventually if you have time to do retreat and things, you may evolve your own meditations that work for your mind. And I think as Westerners, we have to, because we think differently than Tibetans. Mm-hmm. So that's okay, as long as it works for the mind to be like, I'm definitely going to die. So I visualize myself like dropped out of an airplane without a parachute. So at the bottom is death. When I hit the ground, that's it, right? And this is my life as I'm falling. This is my life. Things going by, different phases of my life, different ages of my life, different things I'm doing. And it is fleeting. It's that fast. When you're younger, it doesn't feel that way. When you're older, my grandmother died at 99, and she said in her 90s, a day was like on and off the light switch. That's how fast it felt to her. So it's pretty fast that it's going, and it is going. And so you can visualize, but you can also do little exercises outside of meditation. You're walking across the floor to go to the bathroom. I'm another step closer to death. I'm another step closer. I'm another step closer. I'm another step closer. We're another Friday night closer to death. Another February 1st closer. Right? Another Dharma class closer. You know, each thing, I'm another lunch closer to death. I'm another kissing my husband goodbye closer. So each thing, so it just keeps it a little bit heightened. It's coming, like definitely coming. That's number two. Number three, under this heading, death is certain, is there's very little time to practice Dharma. It's coming soon. There's very little time. They say of a 75-year lifespan, how much time would you say in formal Dharma study of a 75-year lifespan of a Dharma practitioner? How much time do you think is spent? Any guesses?
1, 2.
Yeah.
1 or 2?
I don't know.
1 or 2 what?
Years.
Years? 1 or 2 years? Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts?
1% of your life.
1% of your life? That. So look at your own life right now. Think about your own life. This is where you do a little accounting, meaning, so most people sleep about a third of their life, right? Mm-hmm. On average, average, third is done, gone, sleeping, okay? And I mean, when I was a teenager, it was like 2/3, at that point, but okay, a third. Third is gone sleeping. And just look at one day, normal day. How much time do you spend working? Driving kids around, shopping, all the other stuff of like washing yourself, eating, thinking about what you're going to eat, preparing food, cleaning, hanging out, talking to people, exercising. There's all these other things that are happening during the day. They take time. How much time do you spend in Dharma practice each day?
15 minutes.
Yeah, right? When you think about it, like some people are like, I meditate 10 minutes a day, and that's good, but it's better than nothing, but it's like a really small, when you really think about the imprints that are going into your mind, over time and not too late, you may want to start to extend that that period if you find it beneficial. I found it really beneficial. So you might want to see, because all the other stuff that we're doing, it doesn't really count. It's going away. I'll put it this way. It's impermanent and is going away. All that kind of stuff, slowly. But we spend a lot of time on that stuff. So that's a way to think of, can I look at and make a little goal so that, by the end of this year, I'm going to be doing this kind of practice this much or study this, and next year a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. Again, if you like it and you think it helps you to be more peaceful, happy. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So these 3 points lead to a resolution. So you have the root, death is certain, and then you have everybody dies. Every moment we're closer to death, and there's very little time that we practice. And the resolution that comes from this, from meditating on these points deeply, slowly over time, is I have to practice. I've got to get a practice going. Then we come to the second root. The time of death is uncertain. This is harder to realize because we know we're going to die, but it'll be, in my 80s in my sleep. Right? You don't know if you're going to live to be 80. You don't know that, right? So number one, reasoning under this, the number one reasoning is we live on a planet with an unfixed lifespan. That's planet Earth. We live on a planet with an unfixed lifespan. Tibetan Buddhism teaches there are other world systems, and they have different lifespans. One of them, you get 1,000 years, and you know it when you're born, and at the end of 1,000 years, you die.
I like that one.
So there's that, right? But with us, we don't know. We don't have that we're not in that situation right now, So people die when they're 6, and they die when they're 96.
Mm-hmm.
People die before they're born. People are, anything. The healthy person, I remember 2 cousins, and we were in the hospital visiting one cousin who we really thought was it. He recovered, and the other one died of a heart attack shortly after, who had no problems, no health problems. So we don't know. And so you can review in the meditation all the people at all the different ages they died. So you get this sense of, I don't know when it's going to happen. There was no set time for any of these other people. All the people I know died at different ages, pretty much. The second point and the third points under this are somewhat related. The second point under the time of death is uncertain, is that there are many things out there, more things out there that are actually contributing to your death than supporting your life. So Tibetan Buddhism also talks about spirits, and there's spirit harm, and there's phenomenal amount of that kind of energy that creates contamination in the body, infections, viruses, bacteria, like that. But some of it also comes from physiological imbalances, and there's a lot of them. Viruses and bacteria, there's a lot of them on the planet. And it's always kind of like when SARS appeared. First there was HIV, really deadly virus, then SARS came up, and then there were these flus that popped up recently, and like it was a big surprise. But there's many viruses, thousands of them, and it's just a certain mutation, and then suddenly it affects humans, and it's deadly like that. So you can think of, there's so many things, even something that's healthy like food, but you get food poisoning, people die. Many things. Carbon monoxide leakages in houses, I remember. I knew some people, she lost her 3 kids that way, the poisoning. And that's happened also when I was living in Vermont. There were issues with carbon monoxide poisoning. People have a wood stove and it wasn't vented properly, and on and on. So, and these things happen, and you're like, well, it's not going to happen. But there's many things out there that you just don't know what's happening. And just ordinary life. Like I just went through 2 weeks ago, my father's in his 90s, in his building, which is a retirement assisted living place. One of my brother's kind of aunt by marriage has moved in there. And she was fine. She doesn't need any walking assistance. you know, a lot of people in his building have a walker and a cane. She walked in and she's having a few memory issues, but she needed a little bit more support. But she's been fine. She's had some issues with pneumonia, but I just talked to her 2 weeks ago, and she was eating at my dad's table, and I saw her the other day, and I went over. She was on the couch. I gave her a kiss, and I, you know, and so today was her funeral.
Oh my goodness.
She got another cold. It turned into pneumonia. She's 95. Pneumonia in this case meant they had to drain her lungs again and put the needle in, and she just said, I'm done. I don't want any more. And she died like a few days later, like really quick. But she was just really among the living for me. You know, she was really, you just don't know. So you kind of think about that, the many things contributing to death. And the next point is, under the time of death is uncertain, is the body is very delicate. The body is very delicate. That's why suddenly food poisoning could kill you. For some people, they're stronger, but for some people, it doesn't work. Car accidents, it's the car, the elements of the car, which is glass and fiberglass and steel and plastic and all that, is stronger than the flesh, the body, the way the body's made up. So at a certain impact, it's going to crush the body. Earthquakes don't actually kill you if you're outside an earthquake. Rarely, I mean, unless you're right at the massive crack that opens up in some major earthquake. That's only in the movies, okay? I mean, they do have cracks, but I've never heard of anyone falling into one like that. But it's the structures that fall apart, bridges and buildings that fall down on your head and kill you, like that. So there's so many things. The body's really, you know, and I think some of us know people that ended up in the hospital with a minor thing, and then slowly ended up with a bed sore or hospital pneumonia. They die from that. But they really weren't all that sick when they went in. So the body's pretty delicate. Those 3 points, which is we live with an unfixed lifespan. There are many more things contributing to your death than supporting your life, and the body's very delicate, lead us to a resolution as we meditate more and more on them, that that not only must I practice and get my practice get together or started, I have to do it now. I have to do it now because I could die very soon. The third main heading is the only thing that really benefits you at the death time is your Dharma practice, Buddhist practice, spiritual practice. And this is the easiest point to recognize. So this has 3 reasonings under it. And the first reasoning is your possessions are of no help to you. And I sometimes add position and possessions are of no help to you when you're dying. And I've done a lot of hospice work, and I have seen people kind of hanging on. You know, there's like, my son is not getting the house. Like and you don't need to be thinking about that when you're dying. But people get stuck. You know, they get hooked by something, and suddenly, and some people have your identity is going. And I could see with my dad, who's almost 92, we talk about old age as a forced march into enemy territory, right? So, every year he loses some control over something. I just see how he's kind of winding down. And he's healthy, he's good, he goes to the gym twice a week in his building, and he can't walk that well, but he has a walker, and he's quite amazing. But I just see how, like I took him out the other day, and I like to get him out on outings more and more, but he has a girlfriend at 91, right? And she doesn't have kids, so she doesn't go out much, and I can't manage both of them on my own with the walkers and stuff. It's just not, One time I had her out, and she fell, not hard, she kind of slinked to the ground getting in the car, and I couldn't pick her up. So I like to get him out, and then sometimes he doesn't want to go out without her. So it's limited some of his outings. But I had him out the other night to something that alone, and then I gave him his jacket. It was cold, and he was putting his jacket on, and it zips, and he couldn't zip it. And the reason is he's out of practice. He never uses his jacket. He doesn't go out. So he said, I said, Dad, well, please try to zip it yourself. So that And then he tried for a bit, and he said, I can't do it. So it's like, that's another thing. That's a new thing from like a month ago. So it's hard. So your positions and your possessions, think about them. Go over it in the meditation. Are they really going to help you at the death time? Now, I know people say, well, money would be a help. So check. Really? Now, money might make you more comfortable. You might be able to be in your home and have 24-hour care that you love, the best care with the right bed and everybody there, and you're comfortable. And I've seen people like that miserable at the end. The money didn't do it for you. I've seen really poor people die, very peaceful, very happy, no problem. So something to think about. The second point is, what about your family and friends? Is that helpful to have? This is a little controversial point. Are they helpful to be around you at the death time? Do they help you? What do you think?
I don't think so.
Don't think so.
No, because my husband died very young. He was like 42, and when my daughters came in the room, especially Monica, which she was 18, he really fought hard because he wanted to leave, I guess.
Out of his attachment to her.
Exactly. So I had to stop like 24 hours or a few hours before he died. I said no more because I could see that he was suffering.
Yeah.
To let her go. So I think sometimes it's hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
When you have kids, especially that
Absolutely.
young.
So you may have some friends you really enjoy and family members you really enjoy that are peaceful and they know all the right things to say and what to do, and they may be able to guide you, like in my case, to guide you through your meditations, remind you. And we've done prayer circles around somebody's bed and done practices that we ourselves chose to do or were recommended by Rinpoche. And that's really helpful. It's really helpful. I've been by somebody who had surgery and I was by their bed doing their commitments with them, their practices that I knew that like that, but that's not necessarily most of the case for people. So there were situations, this could happen to you, something to think about. One time I was in Florida and several years ago, and a woman who had connected to our center, or one of the centers, was a Buddhist dying of breast cancer. And she was from a Catholic background and had grown daughters, and they knew nothing about Buddhism. And she said to them before she went into a coma, like, get me a Buddhist here. I want some Buddhist prayers. Like, she was really clear about, and then they contacted the center. Unfortunately, I showed up and I went down and we did some practices for her. She was in a coma already, okay? But the daughters were great. And I, take the family aside and just say, what do you want? Do you want something longer? Do you want 10 minutes? Or this thing is 45 minutes. And I brought booklets you can read with me. And they wanted they're like, we want that. And we want to be in there. We want to read with you. I'm like, great. So I had somebody from the center with me. So we did that. And then there's a part where you get to a mantra, which is a sacred saying. So I leaned over her and I loudly said, I called her name and said, this is what we're doing. She could hear. I mean, if she heard the whole puja. But I said, now I'm going to recite this mantra and I want you to visualize the medicine Buddha over top and the light rays coming down and totally healing you and eliminating any distress you're having so you can just be peaceful like that. I hope there's no suffering for you mentally or physically. And I just want you to focus on that. So then I started to say the mantra over her, right? So she started saying the mantra. Mm. She heard the whole thing. She was like, you just see her lips moving. And the daughters were like, look, she said, So they were relieved, actually. It was really good for the living because they felt like they honored her wishes. But you may feel that you want a certain type of ceremony, but nobody in your family knows what to do or who to call. And they're talking to you about Jesus or who knows what you're, and that's fine if you're a Christian who's dying and wants to hear about that, but some people don't. They want some kind of Buddhist practice. So that can be distracting. There's family members I've seen that are even caregivers foisting their own religious agenda on you, and you're dying and you're in a bed and you can't get out. That's tricky. Mm-hmm. So you can be clear, and So I find it helpful sometimes, friends and family. I've seen situations where people are crying over you, don't die. Please don't leave me. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then people that are leaving young kids, that's really hard because they're very, very attached to the kids, especially if it is a woman. Some of the thought, I've heard people say this when they're dying, that somebody else is going to raise my kids, and you're hanging on. You're just, it's really very difficult. So friends and family, not ultimately, they can't die with you. It's your experience alone. Even if you die in a car crash together, you have your own experience of death than they have. The last one is your body. Is your body of any help? The body is the reason you're dying, generally, usually. Bodies of no help. So these 3 points lead you to a resolution that not only must I practice, and not only must I practice now, but I have to practice well. I have to make sure I'm cultivating a rich, consistent practice that will be there for me at the death time. Like that. Okay? That 9-point death meditation. That's one way we reflect. The easiest death meditation, though, there's many variations. I do this every morning briefly, like 2 minutes. After I wake up, and I'm lying in bed, and you can wake up with an alarm, you can wake up naturally. But you have a moment, probably just coming into consciousness, where you know you're awake now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious, what are your waking thoughts? Anybody? What do you think about?
I have to hurry up.
I have to hurry up, right? You do. I have to hurry up.
Glad I'm alive.
Glad I'm alive. Glad I'm alive.
Because I couldn't die during the night.
Yep, that's right. That's right. It's a good thought to have. It's a good thought. And what else do you think about in the morning? What other, anything, what do you think about when you're waking up? What are your first?
What's ahead?
What's ahead?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the coffee?
Where's the coffee? Yep.
Not
Yep.
yet.
Right.
Not yet.
So what we notice is that
5 more
people,
minutes.
right, exactly. Now people do that. I want to sleep. Oh, my bed's so comfortable. I want to sleep. I want coffee. You know, I gotta get in the shower. And people have lists motoring over them when they wake up. All my lists, all my to do. I gotta. Okay, please put all that to the side. Just the couple waking moments, 2 minutes. Put it to the side. Why? You have the rest of the day to do that. That stuff is boring, tiring. Okay. So that you're happy to be alive. That's a great thought.
Yes.
Fantastic thought. I have like my little like I wake up and then I realize I'm still in this body. I'm still Amy, and I have a little like, okay, great. Not that every day I'm in a good mood, and not that I don't have problems, but I have a really great life. So like, so I get another day in the Amy life. Like, you know, why? Because I basically have a relatively good functioning body and mind. Do you know how amazing that is? Mm-hmm. Just that alone, I'm thrilled. Mm-hmm. For people I know right now with health issues, you're all consumed by it. Some of you know that. All consumed, right? So you get up and you can move around and you can speak and you can think. Amazing. Fantastic. So I have my 2 minutes of appreciating, like, thank you, okay? And then a minute or two, and this is ending really soon. I'm going to die soon. In fact, this is the easiest death meditation. I make it like, today's my last day. This is it. This is it. So I'm not creating my own death because obviously you can see I'm still here. But it's an attitude. It's an attitude. This could be it. So what happens, and you have to remind yourself from doing this practice again and again. So what happens is you go off to work and you immediately forget any of that and you forget your motivation for the day. But so after I have my little death thing, this is it today. I get one more day. Okay? So what do I want to do today? And then at that point, I do my motivation while I'm lying in bed. Oh, great, because I am alive and I'm going to die soon. So what I'd like to do today, as much as I can, is direct the activities, all activities I do with my body, speech, and mind towards something positive that will get me to be a Buddha as fast as possible so I can benefit all living beings. The real purpose of my life today is to benefit all living beings. How am I going to do that? get to enlightenment as quickly as I can. How do I do that? Directing the activities of my body, speech, and mind, something positive. But that motivation to benefit all living beings, it's for that purpose I'm going to get out of bed now. It's for that purpose I'm going to have my coffee. It's for that purpose I'm going to take my kids to school. It's for that purpose I'm going to kiss my partner. It's for that purpose I'm going to have breakfast. That I'm going to now look at my lists. Good. So that all that other stuff isn't just garbage without a motivation. You set a motivation, and all that stuff can be directed a little bit more positively with the motivation. No motivation, ordinary. Creating ordinary karmic seeds, no benefit like that. Good motivation, focused on benefiting others, then better benefit with whatever you're doing. Whatever you're doing, any activity can be transformed. So what happens is, then I get up and I do my activities and everything's normal. It's just me doing my stuff. So the more you can remember, and some people I know they leave notes. I said, leave yourself notes because your mind is not familiar yet with some of these meditations. I know people, they leave notes on the bathroom mirror, motivate. Again, you put the notes in your own words. I know a guy on the dashboard of his car, he has a note that says death, and he says it helps him drive more compassionately and better. You know, he's not going to have an accident, but when he sees it, he's like, okay, I should slow down a little bit. You know, should not try to cut that person off in that lane and like that. So whatever works for you. But I found it helpful because let's say you're at work now, or let's say you're in front of your difficult person we talked about last night. Difficult person's really irritating. And I think you were mentioning somebody difficult in your life. So suddenly there they are. And I'm a little bit like, oh God, you know, like here we go again, or this client, or they, you know. And then if I can just a little bit recall something from my practice, because I'm doing it, practice means I'm doing it regularly. So it's coming up a little bit more now. Please come on in. Hi. And so suddenly what bubbles up is to remind myself, oh yeah, this could be my last day. This could be the last time I see that nasty client. This could be the last time I'm in front of the difficult. I've always labeled this person difficult. I really don't like them. This could be the last time I see them. And when it's the last time you see somebody, we're usually kind to them. We usually have no problem being around them.
Yeah.
So some of you noticed when you had a job, and then you got another job and you were going to leave that office or that job, and you had a lot of complaints about the job and on and on and on, but now it's your last day. And maybe they have a little party for you, you know. But suddenly, it doesn't look that bad, right? The place, suddenly it's like, it's not that bad here. It's because you're leaving. But when you're there every day, things aren't working. So this death awareness really heightens, and it can really reduce the situation, difficulty with the difficult person, and every other problem in your life. When you put it in the context of, I could actually be dying soon, the problems become more minimal. And when you're with actively dying people, they don't worry about all the trivial little things. Mostly they don't. They're not interested in that anymore. So if we could live our lives a little bit heightened awareness like that, then what's most important would prevail. So that's an easy death meditation. You can try with that too. When there's more time in a retreat setting, when we're more together, it takes about 45 minutes to do a meditation on your own death. It's another type of meditation. Meditation on your own death. There may be one on my website, I'm not sure, on the YouTube channel, there might be something. And so what you do is you very slowly really go through, and it sometimes when I lead it, people are in tears, and it really brings up, but I think it's healthy if you practice a little bit what might happen. This is based on having a slow death, like cancer, which many people die from. So a slow death, you're not giving yourself cancer, but it's just a mindset of, if I rehearse it a little bit in life, when it's actually happening, maybe it won't be so tumultuous for me. Okay, because I have thought about it before, and because I do see people that are freaking out. And I remember one of my sister's friends died young in her 30s, leaving 2 little girls. And she died of cancer. And my sister, the last time she saw her, they were sitting there, and she was actually upright, and then she couldn't eat anymore. And then she said to my sister, like, I can't believe that this is my last meal, or I'm not going to be able to eat anymore. Like, each thing was just ripping her apart of each thing she was. So if we think a little bit of, in the meditation, sometimes I ask people to take your last walk. So if you're deteriorating from a chronic illness, you will be weaker and weaker. But it's normal. It's a normal part of life that from a baby, we expand and grow and get bigger. And then you reach a peak, and then it changes and things start degenerating. Okay? But with Tibetan Buddhism, the mind goes on. The mind continues on. So we're going to talk about that in a moment. Okay? But I think it's helpful to think about those things of just a little bit of what would it be like to know that this is the last walk. This is the last time. I don't have any more strength, but I'm going to make it one more time. And then that's like that. What happens when you have to say goodbye to people? We've all probably been in a situation where somebody was dying and we went to say goodbye to them. We wanted to see them one last time, and it's not pleasant. So then again, from what we talked about 2 nights ago, it's a good time to use your mindfulness. I really don't want to say goodbye to them. I don't know how I'm going to say goodbye to them, but I know I will go. And just keep your breathing going. And sometimes I've just sat in silence with people because I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Yeah? There is nothing to say sometimes, unless they want to talk about something. So I think that's usually the hardest part of the meditation. People saying goodbye, and you're kind of seeing certain people, and what would it be like that? And then there's also humor. I think it's helpful to know there's humor when people are dying. That is a possibility. It's not just, there's insights people have sometimes when they're very close to death. It'd be quite amazing. People, coming to some incredible conclusions, feeling very peaceful, feeling exhilarated, like that. So those are different kinds of death meditations. In the Tibetan tradition, what happens when you die is that your mind, and it's also helpful to get yourself used to dying in general. Usually in retreats and things, I first lead a meditation on impermanence before death. Impermanence. So in some ways, it's good to reflect on the changing nature of everything. Everything changes. It's the only constant is change. That's it. And what's helpful is for you yourself now to get familiar with how do you deal with change. I'm curious. How do you deal with change, any of you? Are you good with it? It depends, right? And some people are not good with it. I know she's back there like, so what you want to do then is start with small changes in your life and practice. And I'll give you an example. You make a lunch date with a friend. She calls you at the last minute, she can't make it. How do you respond? Some people are totally okay with it. Some people, not at all. That's a small thing. Okay? Your husband leaves you, bigger thing. Don't want to be with you anymore, or whatever, or business changes, business doesn't work out, you got to change your business. You have to move housing, change jobs, these kind of things. How do you deal with it? How do you manage? Big change is the loss of somebody. Somebody dies. So if we're practicing first with the small changes, right? Then I get pretty good, pretty even with that. I'm pretty okay, pretty flexible. That's nice. Then when bigger changes come, and we want to look at them realistically. So we want to look at it realistically. People die. Like that. It's not pleasant, but this is a natural part of life, which we want to know. This is a natural part of life. Why are we fighting it? It's nature happening. You know, where I live, if the seasons didn't change, I live in the Philadelphia area, if the seasons didn't change up there, it would be odd, you know, for it to just be sunny every single day of the year. It's just, that's not what it's like there. And I like the seasons changing. And because they change, you know, I like what goes on. I like with the winter where it cools down. I like the snow. I like kind of that winter stuff, the coat that I wear in the winter, that I only wear in the winter, you know? And then I remember the last time, usually when it turned spring, and I realized I'm putting that parka away, and I'm like, oh, I like it. It's so great, but it's too hot. So there goes that, you know? So am I really going to have a problem about that coat? Or, you know, then there's the next season, things to look forward to. It's interesting now because I'm living back in the area where I grew up, and there's 4 distinct seasons. And then I lived in California for many years where there's 2 seasons. Well, we said there were 2 seasons. Where I lived in a redwood forest with partly dirt, gravel road. And so our 2 seasons were mud and dust. Those were the 2 seasons. I mean, it was really like that. And I missed it. I was, you know, I got used to that, but I was always in the middle of summer, you know, it was so dry, and I'd be like, if we could just have like a couple drops of rain, please, you know, and certain things I would miss like that. So it's kind of nice. I always liked it having it balanced, you know, a few months of this. So you first can experiment with impermanence and how that relates to your life, and you can look at not only understand that your body, every moment that we're sitting here now, it's changing. There's no stationary thing with your body going on. I'll put it this way, that happens when you die. But otherwise, it's changing all the time and on a molecular level. So you want to kind of realize, oh yeah, like I actually move my arm, that's a change. But on a molecular level, changes, I mean, that's its nature. It's to change. Okay? My mind, look at my mind. Look at your mind, it's always changing. One thought after another thought, another idea, another this, that. Now I'm looking at that, now I'm looking at this. Constant changes going on. Then you look outside of yourself. Nature, even this room, physicists know it's made up of molecules. The curtains are made up of molecules moving in a certain configuration. There's no solid curtain there, no solid wall or floor. It feels that way, but that's not how it really exists. So you kind of get the sense of everything's changing. Everything's changing. Why do I think I'm not going to change? So slowly that's helpful, even a preemptor before the death meditations. You can try. And then what Tibetan Buddhism says is, in your mind, and the mind in Tibetan Buddhism is not the brain, it's not physical, doesn't have a shape, it doesn't have a color, or temperature. You can't cut open the body and say there's the mind. Consciousness is another word for mind, consciousness, okay? In its most subtle form, it's located at the heart center, not the organ, the heart, because that's physical, but there's a subtle energy network, and there are chakras, wheels. There's one at the crown, there's one at the throat, there's one at the heart. In the center of that heart chakra, that heart energy center, is where the most subtle mind resides. So you have most subtle mind, a clear light nature of mind, and then you have subtle mind, and then you have gross mind. Gross mind, we can track. I'm looking at the curtain right now, that's gross mind. My mind is taking in the curtain through my eyes. Through eye consciousness connected to my mind that helps operate the eye, the physical organ. So your mind, non-physical, has a unique way of connecting with your body. And it does it through something called the most subtle wind. Most subtle wind. Most subtle wind is an energy experience. In the Chinese system, it's called qi. Hindu Ayurvedic system, prana. Okay, these are words we've heard before. In the Tibetan system, it's called lung, wind. Okay, and the most subtle wind residing normally at the heart center has a unique ability with the most subtle mind. So the most subtle mind can mount that most subtle wind, and they're distinct entities. One is physical in nature, physical basis, which is the wind. Non-physical is the mind. But they have a unique ability, even though they're separate and unique, to ride along together. They're always together, okay? And it is the mind, though, that informs how the wind is going to develop. So when that most subtle wind becomes subtle, you start developing as a fetus. Okay? And then the wind gets grosser, and here's a gross wind. Basic respiration. You hear it, you see my chest rise, gross wind. But there's subtle winds running up and down in our body that we're not really aware of. Okay? When subtle winds, which is a normal course of living, when those subtle winds start degenerating, you're aging. And when you're aging, they're degenerating. So that's why we have upward moving subtle winds. Upward moving subtle winds allow you to speak, blink your eyes and cry, chew food, turn your head like this. Upward moving subtle winds. Okay? When they start degenerating, your hair turns gray or white. Your eyesight goes. Your hearing may weaken. You might have trouble in your shoulder. All Tibetan system says related to subtle winds degenerating. And that can cause, for instance, you might say bursitis or arthritis, but based on these subtle winds. There's downward voiding subtle winds that help you eliminate waste from the body. You can have orgasm from downward moving subtle winds. It also allows you to walk, to sit down, to turn the lower part of your body like that, to kick somebody. All of that comes from lower, downward voiding subtle winds. And when they start degenerating, again, which is a natural course of living, people have trouble walking. The arthritis in your knees gets bad. You see old people where the gravity is like, they're trying to, they're very unstable, and they start shuffling just because those winds. And so my dad has had an issue where about 1.5 years ago, his left leg stopped working. It had been degenerating. His walking, he was shuffling already, not using a cane or walker, he refused. And suddenly he couldn't walk. And we spent 1.5 years, we just finished this process, scans, tests, this neurologist, that neurologist, on and on to figure out why the left leg's not working. And they haven't found any reason. And I'm like, subtle winds are degenerating. It seems so clear. But, maybe there was a reason. So we wanted to figure it out. We're glad we pursued that. But it seems pretty normal that when you look at old people. So if I accept that about myself too, it's easier, things start happening. Okay. So the subtle mind has this ability to mount the subtle wind right along. It's with the subtle wind, and it informs your body as you develop. And then when you get older, it starts degenerating. They start degenerating. Everything comes back in, and what you're finally left with at the very end, if you have a slow death, but the process happens even if you die of a heart attack or in a car crash right away. It's the same process, it just happens more quickly. So those winds start to develop, and there's different channels in the body and different experiences start happening. Depending on what you are trained in your spiritual practice is what you will recognize happening. And there are inner visions that happen as the death process, the active death process is going on. Like that. So in those inner visions, there's grosser visions, then there's subtler visions, and all of it is designed to bring you to the clear light nature of mind. It's a very pure experience, and in that experience, if you recognize the clear light, which most ordinary beings do not, you can then meditate on something called emptiness, which is a very profound part of our philosophy, the nature of reality. And you want to hold that clear light mind and then meditate on emptiness, because that helps deepen realizations for you. So great meditators look forward to the death time. They don't cause their death. They're not trying to die more quickly. It's not about suicide, okay? But they just know it's an opportunity because they're less encumbered with the body at that point. And if their minds develop, if their spiritual practice is developed, they can actualize higher states of realization at that time. It's a very distinct time with a great opportunity. So if you want to practice now and be that kind of practitioner, you'll be able to use that death time and maybe get enlightened, get to a higher level of consciousness, like that. So what happens in the visions briefly are that first the elements that support your body are dissolving. And there's different elements which also support the earth. So for instance, we've got earth, water, fire, and air. We're all familiar with those elements, and that's what constitutes our bodies as well as planet Earth. The first thing that starts dissolving is the earth element. Okay? And this is your body. So usually people slowly passing away, and I see my father, it's hard for him to pick up his feet. The earth element is going. It's not supporting, the body anymore. And there are people I know that have been in bed and they can't move anymore when they're really actively, like, that's finished. So the earth element's dissolving and you get an inner vision that is like a mirage-like image. Like you look out on a hot road and there's those waves of mirage or water around. And when I say this is an experience internally with your mind, this is your mind. It's not separate from your mind. It's your entire experience. So you do slowly some meditations on these visions, but really doing them very slowly to familiarize your mind with what is definitely going to appear when you're dying. Okay? And the reason you want to recognize the preliminary signs before you get to the clear light is so that you'll catch the clear light. Okay? So also to mention to you, these visions happen now for you. Every time you fall asleep at night, if you have a big sneeze, big yawn, sexual orgasm, those visions happen. Are you recognizing them? Probably not, because we don't do them every day slowly. So some of us with tantric practice, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama says he does them 6 or 8 times a day because they come in every tantric practice. So the more I can do it each day, I do them a few times a day, and sometimes I don't feel like I do it slowly enough to really familiarize your mind so I can recognize those visions, to try to find the clear light and stay focused on that. So there is a mirage-like vision when the earth element dissolves. The next thing that dissolves is the water element. And this is when the fluids in the body start drying up. Person's eyes kind of sink into the sockets more if they're still alive, if they're still breathing. Some of these happen, I think, before the final death has stopped, some after. And then so all these fluids dry up, and then the vision that you have is that you're in a smoke-filled room. That's your whole experience. Then the fire element dissolves, and this is where digestion stops, heat is leaving the body, and you have a vision of sparks in a night sky, as if you have a bonfire and sparks are flying up, or if you have lightning bugs in this part of the country, and that's your whole experience. Then the air element is dissolving, and this is usually when the last exhalation will happen, and then you are declared in our system clinically dead. And then that's when all the gross consciousness ceases at that point, and your vision will be like the glow around a candle that's about to go out. Like that, flickering glow, like that. That's your whole experience. That's your mind. You're not separate from it. Then you get into the more subtle visions. So first there appears what's called a white increase, and this is like a harvest moon, a big moon over an empty field, this milky kind of white. It's not the clear light, but it's like a milky white is your whole experience. And then there is a red increase, and this is based on what kind of elements are dissolving in the body that cause a white and red vision. The red increase is like a brilliant magenta orange sunset across the whole sky, reddish kind of thing like that. Then you have what's called black near attainment. Black as black can be, almost like a dead faint, that, like an almost unconsciousness. And then the clear light dawns. And if you can recognize it and you want to, and right now all we do is we imagine what it could be like. We imagine. Okay, but if you can channel your meditations in the right way and really practice, You might recognize the clear light. Then you try to do meditation on emptiness there. If you can, so then what happens is at that point, for ordinary beings not in control of our rebirth and our minds very much, they say in the center of the heart chakra, around your core, is an indestructible drop. It's closed around the most subtle wind and mounted on that, connected in its unique way, the most subtle mind. And so at that moment when the last vision appears, then the indestructible drop opens, not in any physical basis thing, and the mind and wind go, and they leave, and they say the consciousness left the body at that point. And there may be a sign, physical sign. You may have some fluid out of the nose, could be white fluid, possibly a red fluid, but usually it's like a milky white fluid. It can come out of the eye, the ear, any orifice in the body it can come out of. You'd like it to come out of an upper orifice in the body because it indicates a better rebirth. So they even say, and this is not necessarily true, but generally nose, I think the nose is supposed to be a good one, the eye and the nose. If it comes out of the crown of the head, if there's a fluid, it could indicate a God realm, that you come back in a God realm. If it comes out of the mouth, it could be a hungry ghost realm or animal realm. I think if it comes out of the anus, it's a hell realm indication, like that. Sometimes they say. So in most of us, when people die, we're not looking for that. If you're not trained, you won't know, and you don't even notice it, like that. But sometimes I've seen from some people, like that. And it could take up to 3 days for the consciousness to leave the body. 3 days, Tibetan system. It can leave before 3 days, but definitely at 3 days, your consciousness mounted on the most subtle wind will leave the body, and it goes into something called a bardo. Bardo, B-A-R-D-O. All bardo means in Sanskrit is in between. It's a transition. It's a dramatic transition, getting out of this body, okay? But you're in the bardo, and you can stay in the bardo for up to 49 days. 7 increments of 7. You can leave the bardo in between based on motivation and the way you lived your life and your mind. So for instance, if you led a really good life, you did amazing good deeds, and you're going to gain some higher realization, you might be in the bardo for a short time and then take a really good rebirth. We have every opportunity to practice Dharma and work on your mind, things like that. Sometimes really people got into a lot of sadistic killing, harming people, harming large numbers of people. They may just quickly end up in a lower realm right away. Very fast, something like that. So we'd like to try to do better things so that we can have a better situation like that. Humans, unfortunately, don't have control over the rebirth. Ordinary beings. Highly realized beings can control where they take rebirth. And you're in this bardo, and what you are in the bardo is you have a bardo being's body. It's more subtle than our bodies. You can go through walls. You can traverse parts of the planet. And basically all the bardo being is doing, and it's got its mind, again, in its subtle mind and wind combination, but the body more subtle than our bodies. And it's basically circulating all living beings wherever they are, looking for the right connection, the right karmic imprints it's got in its mind that connect it to take this kind of rebirth. That's all it spends its time doing, whatever is the cause of that. And at 49 days, absolutely, you end up taking some sort of rebirth. Doesn't necessarily have to be human, like that. And then you start the development all over again. And the visions I just mentioned, from the clear light to the black near attainment, to the red increase, to the white appearance, and then the glow around the butter lamp or the candle, to the sparks in the sky, to the smoke-filled room, to the mirage-like image, they go in that order. They reverse and go back until there's conception, if it's a human. Then there's conception. Boom. And then the fetus starts, and you've got the conception is based on the most subtle wind. That is that physical energy that allows the conception to take place. Okay? But the mind is there. Most subtle mind is still there, and it's that most subtle mind that has all the imprints of past activities you've done with your body, speech, and mind, karmic propensities, seeds or imprints, all the same. But it's that mind and those imprints that are going to dictate how that body forms, how that life is. Like that. And then development, you go on like that. Next life, next form, next thing. Like that. So let's see. So that's a process of how we get out of this life and how we get into yet another form. And in Tibetan Buddhism says we do it over and over and over. There's no beginning to mind, there's no end to mind, because every time I think that conception was the beginning of the mind, I just, in a sense, indicated to you that actually conception is just more on the path, but that came from a Bardo being. And before the Bardo being, they were in another life. And why? Because every moment of consciousness, this is your mind, every moment of mind or consciousness has a moment before that caused it, is what Tibetan Buddhism says. And so that cause that I just indicated, saying maybe that's the first cause, but Tibetan Buddhism says, no, well the only reason it's there is it has a cause before it, something caused it. There's always a cause and effect relationship. Nothing happens without a cause. So you can't ever find the first cause, because that first cause will have another moment before the cause did. And if you think this is the end of your life, Tibetan Buddhism says, well, no, there's just moments that are causing another result, another result, another result, without end, without end. So you might say, well, when does it end? When do I become Buddha? If you're practicing, somewhere along the way, your consciousness can get more and more enlightened, more highly realized, like that. So you will still, the body will still die, but your mind doesn't suffer from that anymore, and you control exactly what you're going to do. And if you're a Buddha, you can actually manifest many more bodies to do whatever you want to do. So because I don't have enough bodies right now, I'd like the body that goes to the beach, and the body that hangs with my family, and then the body that's on retreat, and so if you're a Buddha, you're highly realized, you can emanate any way you want, but that your purpose of emanating, your only purpose, is to benefit all living beings. That's why you live. It's your purpose for being. That's a lot of the Tibetan Buddhist path, like that. So, okay, so let me talk now, and are there any questions just about what I've been talking about? This is a more traditional approach of what does Tibetan Buddhism say before I go into more practical things. Any confusion, anything? Yes?
I have a question about the words. Let's say there's all this big thing about the vibration of the words, what the vibration attracts. So if I put death on my car, it's like there's a vibration of the quality of the word and the meaning that is attracting that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why I said you have to put it in your own words.
Okay.
That worked for that guy. Like he didn't feel he just felt it helped him drive more compassionately. That worked for him. So it's really up to you what you want to, and people have affirmations on their bathroom mirror, I'm good enough, I love myself. It's really up to you if you like things like that. But I just find a lot of us need reminders when we're early into our practice, even just to reestablish your motivation during the day. You get off-centered in the day and you're in a bad mood and you're yelling at your partner and what about your motivation? Beginning of the day, I want to get out of bed, I'm here, I want to direct everything to get a Buddha so I can benefit others. And that, I just put that in the garbage. So I just find just that, just coming back to your motivation is so helpful. And are you remembering that through the day? Are you remembering that when you get into trouble and when you're cranky and when we have to. So I find, leave a note, put some notes, and then over years, your notes will change. You'll have other notes that, we used to have a motivation in one of the bathrooms at Milarepa Center when I was in Vermont. There was somebody put on one of the bathrooms, what's your motivation today? So, and I'd like to go in and every time I look at it, I'd be like, yeah, my motivation, I'm going to think about that right now. So it's helpful, I think it's helpful.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about like when your conscious leaves, like you stay for a while. and I felt that when my husband died, we kind of made like a pact between us. I gave him like a reason to live in a nice way. I told him the kids will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You can leave.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, but please, when you leave, stay with me to make sure that they are raised properly. And then I felt guilty when he died because I said, oh my God, now he's stuck here. I did.
Right.
I felt really bad because I said, maybe I didn't let him go, you know, and I kind of said goodbye years later.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you can go now. The
Mm-hmm.
kids are okay. I kind of free him,
Yep.
you know, and I
Yeah.
never felt him again.
Right.
So weird.
Yeah, I mean,
So I don't know.
we do hang on to things. There are entities that sometimes
Do
stick
they?
around. I think there are some people that stick around, but I wouldn't dwell on the guilt because you do the best you can, right?
Yeah, right.
You know, like forgive yourself. I know people that, this is really common when people die in a nursing home or a hospice or a hospital, like it's a separate building than their house, right? And everybody's different. So I usually find that people want either everybody there or they don't want anybody there. And so sometimes I've had friends where, you know, you have that moment and you go to the cafeteria and you have a cup of coffee and they die. And you just blame yourself that I should have been there. And I think sometimes they're waiting for you to step out of the room. So it's like you're doing your best. You're there, you're showing up, and sometimes we don't know what to say. And so things in the past, especially before we knew what to do, I just let it go because I didn't know. And you just learn and you get better and like that. So sometimes they do say, so going into the practical things is they often say if somebody is dying, this is according to Tibetan Buddhism. So again, you do what you feel is comfortable, but we don't actually touch the body when the person's really close to death unless a little bit rubbing their head. Like that, don't hold their hand or rub their feet. It attracts the consciousness down and you want it to leave from an upper opening. Again, this is not 100% surefire. I mean, everybody's different based on their lives, their minds. But in general, we don't, but we will a little bit pull the hairs at the top of the head. I have a little death kit I travel with. So, you know, it's got certain substances in there that with honey, I can just kind of stick it on somebody's head. Whether the hospital knows or not, it doesn't. Nobody knows. I come in, I'm like a last rites person. They call me in sometimes to do. That's fine. Sometimes the family is very comfortable with that. And they're like, do you have the Kala Chakra sand? You know, but sometimes not when you're in a hospital. So my mother dying in the hospital, Rinpoche came and did all these pujas, but he brought relics and there were some special pills he put in her mouth. So she was in a coma. And then the next day, there was a big hoo-ha in the hospital about that they found blood in her mouth. They thought it was blood. And then I'm like, that something else was happening. They went around with these tests and I went, wait a minute. I said, my teacher put these relics, it's herbal pills in her mouth. She's fine. There's nothing. And she was fine. It wasn't that. But I said, please don't rinse them out or don't something. So there's things like that you can help people. And you do the best you can in those situations. But one of the things I wanted to mention is, are you clear about what you want with your life and your death? Are you clear? Have you put it in writing? And have you told the people closest to you? So I give you an example. This is on a practical level. And Rinpoche also talks about on a practical level. If you go to the FPMT website, our organization, it's also on the back of my card, if you need that website too, or my website, then we have more materials under our education things on death and dying, I think, than anything. So it's important in the Tibetan tradition. It's important to get our minds ready for the death time and to maximize that death time. And it's very different than the way it's often handled in our culture, where there's a lot of fear, misunderstanding, and not talking about it. But everybody's different. And it has gotten much better in this culture where, you know, there's hospice now and you can talk about it. But what Rinpoche has are these 5 powers, they say, at the time of death. And they're basically just things like what we're already doing in practice is setting a good motivation,
Mhm.
familiarizing yourself with that, like making sure the mind's familiar with virtue, purifying negativities, like leading a good life, basically being a good person, being a kind person, and so it's a practical way of kind of living your life. So on another note, more practically too, is here's a document, 5 wishes. This is legal in Florida. It's legal in many states. It's online with many organizations, and there's different variations on this. Okay, this is a living will, basically. So the second part is, do you have a regular will, last will and testament? A lot of people do that have kids and property. Smart to do. It's set, all that stuff, and your family doesn't get stuck in probate court with a mess of stuff. So you really want to make it easy for your own mind and then the people that you're leaving, like that. But this is a living will. And what the 5 wishes relate to, it's my wish for the person I want to make care decisions for me. You designate that. You may designate a few people, okay? The kind of medical treatment I want or don't want, how comfortable I want to be, how I want people to treat me, and what I want my loved ones to know. So the nice thing is, this has spaces you can fill in. It gives you suggestions. So if you can't think up your own stuff, you just take it in here, and what you don't like, you cross out or you white it out. And you make this your own document, and you get witnesses, and you get it notarized, whatever you need to do to make it legal, and you put it with your will and testament. It's all together a death kit. Now, if you really want to get fancy, and this isn't really fancy, but this is, for me, essential, is I would like the people that it does, and what you do is make copies of this and give it to your 3 closest people. The people you feel are going to be reliable. Do they live near you? I don't really have that many people that live near me that could do it, but I've got an arrangement with some people. Would you fly up to help with my body to deal, if I'm dying, and okay, well then you'll be number 2 and she'll be number 1 and like this. So you really want to designate, and the thing you'll notice when you do it, and you don't have to wait till you're 50 to do it, okay? When you do it is, your mind will feel great. Your mind will feel, it's like I got it together. So what I did is I recorded all of my practices in my voice, the way I like to do it. I hope I don't get sick of my voice when I'm dying. But there's pauses where I want to pause, how I want to do it. And so I've recorded all of my practices, and then I'm in the process of transferring them onto these memory sticks. And then in the packet that I give you, if you're the person, you get the whole packet, the will, blah, 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 and you get the memory stick. And it's like, you just plug it in, download it, whatever you need to do, which is usually not that difficult for people. And you put it on, plug me in, and you don't have to worry about what I'm supposed to do. Just plug me in and it'll just loop. Just make sure it's running and I'll be fine, okay? Or do you want to leave the printed list as well of your practice as well in the kit with the practices? So if it's a family member and they don't know what to do, but there it all is, and they can give it to somebody Buddhist, here's her practice. Like, here's the list of it, and here's all the packet of it. It's up to you. You don't need to do that, but it alleviates my mind, because the people around me would have no idea what to do as a Buddhist thing. So, and I don't want them to feel bad that they don't know what to do. So take care of it. Give them support. They'll be okay with that. They'll be fine with stuff like that, generally. And then you have to think about these decisions, and you go now, well, what's the big deal? Care decisions. My mother didn't have a living will, right? She fell, she had a brain bleed, she was on blood thinners. They had to take her off of blood thinners, she had a stroke. She couldn't communicate at that point. You say, oh, people, she couldn't communicate. Fortunately, when my grandmother died before my mother's mother, my grandmother was very clear what she wanted, what her wishes was. She didn't write it down, but she told us. So we all knew, no problem. So we did what she wanted in the end. And I said to my mother at one point, wow, I'm so glad like we're moving along together, but isn't it good that we know what she wanted? And I'd asked my mother before what she wanted, and she never wanted to talk about it because it's morbid, what she told me. So I know too many families, the person's incapacitated, they didn't come out of the surgery, they're in a coma, and the family's like, I don't really know if she wanted a feeding tube. Do you think she wants a feeding tube? You know, you put somebody on a ventilator, they may never come off the ventilator. Is that how they want to be? And they're like awake and, so, you know, so please tell people around you what you want at the appropriate time. It's not like launching into breakfast and, you know, I want to be cremated, okay? You're gonna, you know, like find an appropriate time. And so what happened with my mother after my grandmother died, she didn't want to talk, you know, but after my grandmother died, and she knew that we knew what my grandmother wanted, and we did it. We had no problems, no guilt about it. And then later in a really good space, and I said, you know, again, I said one of the best things is we knew what she wanted and we did what she wanted. And I said to my mother, I said, that's why I kind of want to know what you want. Like, can you tell me what? And she told me right then exactly what she wanted. And I'm like, got it, thank you. That's what we did. I think she was pretty peaceful when she died. So you think you're going to be able to tell somebody, and you think you're going to be in control. You're not going to be in control at that time. Rarely are people in control. So you might have to think about organ donation. Do your loved ones know what you want? Okay, it might be on your wall, in your ID, you know, your driver's license. But I had a friend, and she lost her 40-year-old husband, fell off a roof while he was building their house, and she had a 6-year-old daughter, and they were there, and it happened in Hawaii. He died very quickly. He bled to death, and she's at the hospital. She's out of her mind, you know, total shock. And she's sitting there with her daughter, and they came and asked her about his organs. She had no idea. These were Vajrapani people. Right? She had no idea. She has some friends that she's like, you're not in your right mind. Things that she didn't know what to say. And they waited and they waited and they waited, and they came to her and they finally said, you know, we need a decision now. And she, at the last minute, blurted out, no, I don't want to donate his organs. And they didn't, and fine, and they did a cremation later, and then some months later, she was cleaning out their cabin that they were living in and a lot of stuff, and then she found his wallet somehow, and in there was a piece of paper that said, I do not want my organs donated. So it's like, tell your loved one, because what if she had donated the organs, and then, you know, and certainly it could have helped somebody, but that wasn't what he wanted. So that's another thing, and for Buddhism, one way or the other, donating or not, it's a personal decision. Buddhism doesn't say donate or don't donate. It's your own personal decision. A lot of times great meditators will not donate organs, and the reason is they need to harvest the organs right away. So it can be before the consciousness has left the body, and the consciousness will still leave, but it can interrupt kind of how you're managing your meditation like that. For ordinary beings, it really depends on you individually. If you are younger, healthier, you think many people could live, that's a personal decision. But do let people know around you what you might want in case you don't have it written down. Other things that we do, euthanasia. What do the Buddhists say about euthanasia? So with animals, we actually don't euthanize. And this is seen as a little controversial. Are you contributing to the suffering of your dog or your cat? However, unless you know the mind of the dog or cat, this is what Tibetan Buddhism says, you don't know what you're shifting, what you're ending. And often when pets die, in the very end, it doesn't last that long. I mean, I've been with some pets that might go on for 3 weeks, like that. And I've gotten sleeping pills, and I've gotten painkillers that I've broken up to give to them to just let them be peaceful, not to kill them, and just hung out. But what people do is it's inconvenient. You have a big dog and it can't control its bowels anymore, and it can't walk anymore, and it's a mess, and people just, it's easier to have the vet come and give them a shot or take them to to the vet and do it. It's a personal decision, but Buddhists try not to euthanize their pets. We play mantras for them. We take them around stupas, these shrines. We can put prayer wheels at their heads. We say prayers for them. And again, I've done the sleeping pill, painkiller thing to help them sleep and just be out of pain till they pass away naturally. Because they say that even if it's a few weeks like that, they may be finishing out some negative karma in the animal realm, and they may end up in a good rebirth after that. It's hard. That's a hard one. With people, should they be on life support? Should we take them off life support? This is individual as well. So what we tend to do if the person's Buddhist is we would try to consult with a great Lama. And I do know that Lama Zopa Rinpoche is always asked about this with families and students. And it's been different at times. There was a guy in his 40s who died of colon cancer in our community in Santa Cruz, and Rinpoche came to see him or advised. His wife asked, and Rinpoche's advice was to keep him on life support as long as possible. Mm-hmm. And another guy at 75 had a massive heart attack, was at that point, I think, on a ventilator, and Rinpoche said it was okay for the family to get all the kids there. They were all Buddhists, and when they're ready, they could stop the life support and let him pass away peacefully. Like that was okay. So again, Rinpoche having some insight into the mind, seeing it didn't bother at that point. It wasn't going to change the outcome. The rebirth would be okay, like that. When people die, I wanted to mention what's very important is there is a grieving process, and it's natural. There's a grieving process, and it's natural. But before I want to talk about that, I want to also mention, so I mentioned that we're in this form, and then our mind is in a bardo, okay? And then it's in another form. And then it's another bardo and another form, another bardo. So we had Bob Thurman speak many years ago in California. He's a great scholar at Columbia. He's a very funny man, big personality. And he's a bit older now. And he just had come out with a new translation of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is really, he said accurately, the Tibetan Book of the In-Between is what really how it should be translated. And you can follow it and read it, and it tells you exactly what's going on when people are actively, slowly dying. And he mentioned that you're in this life, and then you're in a bardo, and then you're in the next life. He's like, there are no dead people. What's the problem? So when you really think about it, my mind's going on, and this is what I find sometimes very dramatic. Think about your life right now and how dramatic it is. Okay? It can be dramatic. Maybe it's not dramatic, but think of all the details of your life, how much time you spend thinking about yourself, how important you are, how incredibly attached you are to your family or to your things, or how important it is that you get this car or this house or that, all these things, and then you're going to die, you're going to have another life, and you may not remember one thing of this life. Do you remember much of your past lives? Most people don't. And all the energy you spent thinking about this job and that thing, and I went to that store to get that top with those shoes and the thing, and my hair with that, and this boyfriend and that person, and I mean, it's so endless. It's so endless. And then my attachment and my mother this life, my father this life, and how good, and all the different trips you go through when you're irritated with them, and all the stuff you know, and I had so many mothers and fathers. I don't remember any of them. I don't remember any of them. So in some ways it releases me from taking myself too seriously and just being totally glommed on to this here and now, because it's fleeting. It's going. I'm not going to remember any of it. Like that. Going to be in, so, but what's going to happen is the positive seeds in my mind go on and on and on and make me happier. And whatever lives I have, better situation, better ability to practice Dharma, better ability to quickly become a Buddha, and then you're free. Then you're totally free and blissful every moment. Then you can really help. So sometimes if you're a bit mired in what's going on at this particular time, take a breath and reflect on that this is just, you get 80 years, it's a drop in the bucket. Just, and sometimes I love when I'm in a rural place and I look up in the sky on a clear night, and just like at Laudo, I was out there one of the last few nights, I was like, it's just endless stars, there's just like, wow, all these universes out there, right? And occasionally, there goes a shooting star, and it's like, that's the end. The planet, like that's the end of that, Sometimes life's like that. It's very fast. So sometimes you can back up a little. You don't have to make it so serious or so, if you get freaked out about something, it's like, you've been through it many times before. You just don't remember. We've been through all things before because there's no beginning to the mind. That's what Tibetan Buddhism says. So when people die, there is a grieving period that's very healthy that you need to go through. For some people, they choose to get grief counseling. It's very helpful, especially if you have young kids dealing with a death, or a teenager, or you yourself are having trouble. Grief counselors are different than regular counselors. People that do grief counseling, it's very different. So I find it very helpful to get support, the support that you need. Some people join online forums. Some people talk with other people, and we have our own support system, our own friends, family members like that, but it is helpful. But the other part about grief is it's important to know that grief ends. So you don't need to be a victim and that your husband died or your kid died, and there are people and that's all their lives become in a not healthy way. But there's some people who use that tragedy to help support other people going through it, or they start funds, or they, can be very helpful like that. But if you're going to be a victim from it, paralyze the rest of your life in a way, or not really helpful. And that's probably not what the loved one would want you to do. What does Buddhism say about suicide? Suicide is seen as a very negative act, taking a life, harming a life. It is not what's considered a completed killing karma, because in order to have that, which makes it a stronger negative imprint in your mind, the person you're killing has to die before you. And they don't. In suicide, you die at the same time. You're the one intending to kill yourself. You die at the same time. So it's slightly different. A lot of people that kill themselves are mentally imbalanced, suffering tremendously, confused, let's say. I don't think it's a solution at all. So if you are depressed and you're seriously considering suicide, not from a grave illness, but just in general, please get help right away. Please get help right away. If you know somebody that you think is suicidal, you can, and you're close enough to them, they say the best thing is to directly ask them, have you thought about harming yourself? Have you thought about suicide? And if they kind of don't answer, or they're, and say, what would you do? Do you have a method? If they have a method, they're serious. You need to get them help. Some people don't, they're not sure. They're like, I don't know. I don't know what I do. But if somebody's really like, yeah, I got a gun, or I'm going to hang myself, I would hang myself, then they're seriously, you should get help for them. Those are certain signs, because I've worked with people, suicidal people, things like that. If you're a Buddhist and you believe in non-harming, or you took refuge, kind of say you're a Buddhist, non-harming is the number one Buddhist precept, okay? So if you have a friend that's dying of cancer and they discuss that they're going to get some meds to make sure they can die at the end, they don't want to suffer, and can you help them do it? You can, if you don't feel comfortable, I did this when I did AIDS hospice work. One of my friends I was with for 2 years, and he asked me, I was a new Buddhist, but he asked me at the time, I'm considering getting some medicine so that I can kill myself, and can you be here? Will you administer it for me? And I just told him honestly, as a Buddhist, I said, I can't get it for you. I don't feel comfortable getting it for you. I don't feel comfortable administering, giving it to you, but I'm happy to be here with you. If you want to do that, I'll be here right to the end with you, like that. So I think it's good to be clear what you feel comfortable doing, because for Buddhists, we would see it as helping to harm a life or take a life, and that creates some negative karma for me, even though I would have a good motivation. But I don't feel comfortable myself doing that because I don't know the person's mind, whether they should just purify out in the suffering they go through, but you can make people relatively comfortable with different medications. And people are often balancing between the morphine and being a bit lucid, and some people, you can manage it well. What's hard is when the pain can't be managed. And so a wonderful way to support people is to just show up and be there by their bedside. You don't need to really say anything, but if you just hang there, because usually people in a lot of pain, people don't want to be around it. It's too uncomfortable. Like that. People don't know what to say. And so I think it is helpful if we learn. We have many death books about what to do, what prayers to do in the FPMT. So this way people always ask me, and I'm like, well, here's the book. And I send them a link, here's the book. And everything's in there. And if you don't know what to do, you just read the prayer in English with some faith. So, like that. You just do that. You just show up like that. No problem at all. Buddhists are normally cremated. A lot of Buddhists are cremated, but some are buried. And that's a personal decision as well. There's no statement of you need to do this and that. If you can leave a body for up to 3 days, it can be really helpful. And I'm amazed at, so Buddhist countries, a country like Taiwan, I went through there once with a great Lama. I was organizing his teaching tours, and we went to visit a family, and the old mother had died, and they wanted us to come and the Lama to do some prayers. And so Taiwan, because it's a Buddhist country, and they have a belief of leaving people for a few days, and people come to pay respects, they have refrigerated units. And it was in their garage, and it's just for this purpose. They rent them out. It's a unit that holds the body. She was very peaceful in there. You could see her. There's glass on top. It's refrigerated. And so it's like your own little morgue shelf, drawer that you have, but it's in your home, and there were flowers. There was an altar around it. There was a picture of her. It was very beautiful. And we went, and the Lama said prayers there, and they wanted her to be there for a few days, and then she was cremated like that. So regardless of the weather, some countries have things like that. We have funeral homes, and they can preserve bodies and take care of all that for us. And then you can choose if you get coffins or, cremation. Sometimes they use coffins, and sometimes they do it and bury people. So it's really your own personal choice what you'd want. But again, you can leave direct wishes, like, please, if you can, leave my body for 3 days. Usually deaths at home, I think you can do that. You have to check because some states have different laws. Mm-hmm. In hospices and in hospitals, they won't allow you to leave bodies for 3 days. Very rare. We have a Buddhist hospice at Land of Medicine Buddha in California near Santa Cruz, part of our organization. And there I was with the body we were there for 3 days with the first person that died. There was a friend of mine, a nun. And I think they may leave the body there in something like that, if there's agreement in advance. And amazingly, the body doesn't really deteriorate until the consciousness leaves. Like, I've witnessed bodies, and if it's a holy being, there's a lot of energy in the room. And when the consciousness leaves, it feels different. It's just something's changed, and the body changes. So then they get the gray, decomposing pallor. Mm-hmm. But sometimes for a holy being, I remember Rinpoche's mother, she died in hot India at the time, and was radiant in the room for almost 3 days until the consciousness left. Then the body starts decomposing like that. So it can be somewhat tricky, tending a body, leaving it there like that, depending on the circumstances. And I do remember my friend, the first person that died in that hospice in Land of Medicine Buddha, and it was a little bit odd, but her ex-husband, who hadn't seen her in years, wanted to see her, but she passed away. Like, she had just passed away, and so he said he wanted to come and see her body, and we told him where it was and everything, and I came over to help my friend, and we were saying prayers around the clock, even after she died, that Rinpoche had advised us to do. And I come into the room, and my friend has a blow dryer. And I'm like, is she doing her hair for the ex-husband? Like, I was like, and I came in and I'm like, said, what are you doing? And it's better to, around the dead body when the person's dying, to keep the situation in the room peaceful. So if you're having a fight over mom's pearls or the property, you don't do it in the room with the person in a coma. They can hear you. Often they can hear. And I noticed with my great aunt, with her sons arguing about something over her, and her breathing got agitated. She was in a coma, and I asked if would they mind talking in the hallway, and they're like, oh yeah, sorry, and then she kind of calmed down, and so I was watching. So it's hard. I don't know if they hear, but it seems like something. So so what my friend was doing is some ants had come, or insects. There were just ants, little ants, and they were all over her. Like, so she was blowing the ants off. Because we're Buddhists, we can't kill the ants. And then we had like the light turned down low, and she lit some incense, and then he came to see her like that. So you try, to manage the best kind of thing. Also, I'd say if you are a caretaker for a loved one, okay? Caretaker, if you're a volunteer caretaker for somebody, if you volunteer for something. And so certain things you want to bring into the space when you can is a sense of peace and calm. Other people will get agitated around you. They're freaky. Some people, it's their first time they came to see them, and they freak out and they burst into tears. And so you don't have to get involved in the emergency. And if you're really like a close relative where you can dictate the scene in the room, you might say, if somebody breaks down theirs, maybe see if you can have them come out to another room, and then when they feel better, they can come back in and get themselves together. It's not bad to cry at the scene. I've cried with people that are dying. We cried together. That was different, but to be loudly sobbing over them, don't leave. If they hear your distress, it can really disturb their mind or things like that. So again, what's reasonable? So you want to understand that people get freaked out, and then people say stupid things. They don't mean to, they just don't. They're uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable situation. So the more you can bring a presence of calm and clarity and sometimes silence, I find is a good holder as well for people. Sometimes stepping into another room and talking about the loved one and helps the person that they're leaving behind. And then we have to let go of people at times. And so, I've witnessed some poignant things and then some funny things as well. But one poignant thing I remember, similar to, I think, you releasing your husband and letting him go. And there was, so when I did the AIDS work in San Francisco, it was in the 80s, and AIDS was rampant and a lot of people were dying very quickly. And the San Francisco General Hospital, which was often for indigent or poor people, there was a guy from Sweden dying. They had a wonderful AIDS ward. They were really like renowned, very special. And a guy from Sweden was there dying, and his mother flew over to be with him. And she was amazing. And so he should have died, when people are really ravaged with something. And the nurses were like, trying to help him and his mom, like what's he waiting for? What's he hanging on for? So one day he said to one of his favorite nurses, and the mother was out of the room, and he said, he could barely talk, but he said, can you help me? I need to die, and I can't with my mother here in the room. And they were very close. It always gets me really. And so he said, I can't tell my mom. I don't know how to tell her that. So could you talk to her? The mother was really spacious. And so the nurse talked to the mother, and the mother said, okay, like, absolutely. And they went in and they had a big goodbye. It was very sad, crying, whatever. And then the mother went out, and the son said, I want you to go out, and because I know you love San Francisco, and I know you want to, I want you to have lunch at that place and go to your favorite shop. And she went out for the day. It was a nice day, and she went out, and they called her that he had passed away. And she came back to the hospital. So sometimes I think when you have that kind of space to release people, honor their wishes, rather than like, no, I don't want you to die, like that. So that's really spacious to do. And then there's humor. So one of my friends, his brother was dying of AIDS in New York, many years ago, one of the early people to die, and he was a theater critic, and he was a very funny guy with a sharp sense of humor, and he loved theater and he loved dance and Fred Astaire movies and all those old kind of movies. And so my friend was very close with his brother, and he was visiting, and they were both brothers were in bed watching a Fred Astaire Ginger Rogers movie, and then the guy dying says all of a sudden he's crying, and he's got a tissue, and so my friend turned to him and he said, what's happened? What's the matter? And then he looks up at the TV. He's got his tissue, and he's like, Fred and Ginger, I'm really gonna miss them. There's humor. But in the end, when he died, he was in a coma, and his parents had divorced years before. They had remarried and had other kids, so there was this big family. They all came to the room, the hospital room. They're all around the bed. So this guy dying Stephen had wanted his mother to read like New Age books about dying, like Stephen Levine, and the mother was a Long Island housewife. She didn't know anything about stuff like that, but she read some of these books for her son, right? She had a really heavy Long Island accent. And so at the very end, and he had been in a coma for like a couple of days, and the nurses are saying it will be soon, based on the breathing, and he'll pass away soon. And so the mother, and it must have been tragic for her to lose her son, and she's leaning over him, the whole family's there. And she's leaning over, and she leans really closely into him, like near his face, and she's like, Stephen, go to the light. Go to the light. Like, bless her heart, right? She was trying to, and he opened his eyes, and he said, I'm trying, Mom, I'm trying. Seriously. So, like, you never know what people surprise you. People sit up in the end, they feel great. They're, I think there's some kind of acceptance. They're ready. It's okay now. Now it's okay. And some people are turbulent dying. Some people it's ugly at the end. There are convulsions, things like that, depending on what's going on, and you just try to be there with them. If they want you there, you just try to be there with them. I had the guy I was with for 2 years was in a lot of pain at the end. It was really awful. And he was at home, and but he would, what the disease was doing, he would just start screaming in pain, and there was nothing to alleviate it. He took the medicine and it hadn't worked, and he would just start screaming, like this moaning for 45 minutes. And so his lover would leave, couldn't deal with it. His roommate left, they couldn't. So sometimes I would just sit there, on the bed next to him and just be there. And he was always like, you didn't leave, like, thank you for not leaving. And then the pain, everything's impermanent. So it would change, and then the pain would slowly subside. It would be a little bit less, or the medicine would have kicked in. But it's hard. But once you do it once and you hang out with somebody's pain and the discomfort, it's easier to do it again. Like that. Because our spiritual practice, a lot of it, as I said, is about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. Like that. So hopefully we're a little bit more comfortable with death and dying. Like that. Changing bodies, changing forms, transitions. Like that. Any questions?
We have talked about our own death, but what about somebody close to us? Like, sometimes I think of my kids and I can't do it.
So what about it? What do you mean?
Like, it was very strange, but the other day one of my daughters, out of nowhere, she said, when I die, I wrote it down. She said something, when I die, I want you to be serious and help. And she said, if a car hit me, I want you to be brave. She said that.
Right.
She's 4 years and a half. I said to my husband, I'm like, I hope she was like imagining something.
Yeah, I mean, kids talk about all kinds of things. So I think it's not really a nice little experience of nature that children sometimes die before their parents. I would like that off the planet, basically. It's too much. The parents I've seen, it's too much. So you hope that doesn't happen, but to spend obsessive thoughts about it isn't going to benefit anybody. So you enjoy her, and kids get all kinds of thoughts. I don't necessarily pay much attention in that, but kids have a lot of different thoughts. But the other thing is, people have their own karma, and there's not a lot you can do. If somebody's going to die prematurely, I don't mean to scare you, but things are unfolding. And there's one of my friends, she wasn't really my friend, but my parents had very close friends, and their daughter, when she was born, they really wanted a girl. They had 2 sons. They had a girl, and when she came out, I guess whatever happened, she ended up, there was a mistake at the birth, and she had cerebral palsy. Something hit the head, and so Linda was somewhat intelligent, but she was developmentally, she couldn't function in the world on her own, right? And she was a few years younger than me. So I remember growing up with her, and we used to go to the center to do volunteering to help kids like that. And she was there, and we'd teach them how to do things. But it kind of destroyed the parents in a way. I mean, they were really struggling, and Linda, and but she could learn and she could do stuff. You could talk with her, and she knew she was limited. So when she became in her 20s, about 25, 26, she was an adult. She had an adult's body, and there was, in a situation, she had understood about a halfway house where she could go and live and be supervised, but to live with a peer group and on her own and kind of do, and they had tasks they could do, and the parents wouldn't let her do it. They just couldn't let her go like that and live. And she'd be near them, but they were like, no, she's going to live with us. And I think it kind of, she kind of said, okay, enough of this life then. And she died. So she got some kind of respiratory thing, but she died at like 27 years old, and the parents have never been the same. They just, their personalities are kind of like that. But I wrote them, I was at Laudo at the time. I think I heard after that she had, and I wrote them a letter. I was on retreat, I wrote a letter after, and I was just thinking about, it's tragic, but they had an opportunity to be parents to somebody like her that needed that kind of care. Like they could have however many years they had with her, whatever age, if you lose a child, which I hope you never do, but you still can celebrate the time. You need to be special people to support a developmentally challenged kid. And I think they did a pretty good job, and she was happy for the most part. But whatever chance you get, you still have that succulence of those years with somebody. So are we really relishing and appreciating the time presently we're with them, or holding our minds in fear and other things of, you can lose something anytime. Let's just celebrate what we have, and you take, all you can do is your best. You take care, you protect your children, you teach them certain values, you try to shelter them, give them a good life, give them education, housing, food, clothing. That's all you can do. And you're going to make mistakes doing it because you learn from your parents. They made mistakes, they learned from their parents. There's no Harvard of parenting school. You just learn. So that's all you can do. And once you know you've done that as best as you can, even though you make mistakes, things unfold. And you hope, that she has many years and many things, but rather than having the fear, and then it makes them scared, makes kids scared. Why are you scared about this? And they get relationships to death sometimes based on our relationships with death. They become afraid of, like for me at 13, we went to say goodbye to an aunt of mine who was dying of liver cancer. We come to the door with my mom, my sister and brother, and her daughter says to us, leans into us we're not telling her. They're not telling my aunt she's dying. Like she doesn't know she's dying, So we played this whole charade of visiting her and we'll see you later, and so for me as a 13-year-old, I was like, is there something wrong with dying? Like it made it that something was wrong because they're not going to tell her. That was kind of scary, things so it's interesting what kind of so I think you do the best you can, enjoy your daughter like that.
And sorry, again, those meditations, is there anyone that we can do for a loved one? Like you said, if it happens, you're not going to be able to think as clear.
Yeah, so the Death book has all the meditations, all the prayers you can read, and the center can help put you in touch with that if you like those kind of prayers. But if you have your own spirituality, and for everybody, you don't need to be a Buddhist. If you have your own spirituality that works for you, I would definitely do what you feel comfortable if you have your own thing. But we have some books of prayers you can recite. We if you want to get really elaborate, we have things of mantras you can print out and put on the body. This is for more Buddhist practitioners. I have holy water I bring, and I have certain substances I can put in, little pills in people's mouths, and I can put stuff on their crown according to Buddhist belief that a lot of people like. They're like, I want that. I want somebody to do that for me. So depending on what you're comfortable with, like, and what you think the person is comfortable with, and it does help those living and of who's behind, who's left behind, of what you feel. And it's nice when you do feel that you did everything you could for the person. You helped them die, you helped them treat you, and then you helped in the 3 days of the prayers. I always feel good when we've really done everything we can. We usually take rounds. You take turns if you're with a Buddhist community, and because you don't want to stay 24 hours, but there'll be shifts of people that are doing things, and like that can be helpful.
I want all that.
What's that?
I want all that.
Yes, that's nice. So make sure that you let people know that you're friends with.
I have.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's very helpful.
Jackie gave me the other day like a list when my dad was really sick.
Mm-hmm.
He got really sick this month.
Mm.
He came to visit from Colombia and he just ended up in the hospital. So Jackie gave me a list and it's really wonderful.
Yes, very helpful. A list of the prayers to do and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah, can be really helpful. Because people always say to me, what do I do? Like, what do I do?
Right.
Here it is. And it's very explanatory. I mean, it's a book you need to read, but you can just take sections of it quickly. And, we have a medicine Buddha practice I usually do for people sick, mentally, physically, and then right after they've died, they don't even need to be there. You can visualize, my grandmother died, and she went to the funeral, body went to the funeral home. And I knew my mother wanted me at home that night. Like, I could have gone to the funeral home and stayed all night, but I knew my mother wanted me. That would have disturbed her. So I just did the medicine Buddha first in the hospital room, right when my grandmother died, with her body there. And then I did it again and again at home, visualizing her. It's fine. I didn't think there was any problem like that. You do your best. Do your best.
So I had a colleague of mine who recently, so he went into a coma, and of course I called Namdrol, right? And she gave me the prayers to put on his body and some mantras, which I can't remember, but I played it right out of my phone by his head. And that was just very, felt right. And he woke up actually, listening to the mantras. And then he lived for a few more weeks, but it was pretty, last stage cancer. But so for somebody who's not Buddhist, who doesn't believe in anything, I found it really uncomfortable. And I wasn't there on his last moments. He had at-home hospice care and heavy medication and stuff to help him through his pain. But how would you suggest handling somebody who's doesn't believe, right? So in the coma, fine, I felt comfortable that maybe these mantras wouldn't agitate him. He might not even know what they are. The prayer stamp was on his chest. So nothing like that could agitate, but that's my fear, right? How do you handle somebody just inside quietly you recite? Or?
Well, mainly, because I've come in for non-Buddhists, something, you have to find out what that person's spirituality is. And so I wouldn't foist anything on them that isn't their belief system. So I would, if I have time, find out from the family or whatever. Like the Buddhist woman, I took the daughters into the kitchen and I said, so, was your mom like, a little bit to get her background in Buddhism, what was the mom like? Was it just some, and to find out. So it's good to know if the person's Christian, if they, I've set up altars for people, they wanted Jesus there, they wanted what their belief system is, because other stuff will feel foreign to them and they might not like it, but they can't express. So you do the best you can. If somebody doesn't believe, if I get a chance to talk with them, I might just mention, if I'm going to be there with them, do you like music? They might want some music played. They might want me to sing. They might want to just talk about things in their past or not talk about anything. They're like, no, and just kind of alleviating their fears of, whatever is showing up for you right now. If it's scary, just try to relax. Just try to relax. Everything's okay, or, things like that. And And even though it may not be okay, but it's kind of like, why don't you just think some happy thoughts right now? If you're having negative thoughts, what kind of happy moments can you recall? In your, so things like that, I would remind them, because if they don't have any spiritual thing, they're not going to feel comfortable with that kind of thing. So if you're on your own, I mean, you're there, they're there. You can do Tonglen meditation silently. They don't. That I do that everywhere. They don't need to know what I'm doing. That's my own personal thing I bring in, but they don't need to know. If they're Buddhists, maybe we do it together. They're happy to do it together if they're still conscious, and that's great. Like that. I've had friends where they, I did the practice for them because they weren't strong enough to do it anymore, and they were like lying down, and I just do it next to them, and they could visualize. But I know the friend who died at the hospice in Land of Medicine Buddha, the first one, she was given a practice from Rinpoche to do years before, and it was a rigorous practice that kind of was a little overwhelming, but sometimes all you need to do is get started. She never really got started, and then she got ovarian cancer, and she died from it. And she said to me later, I should have done the practice. Like, he obviously gave her that practice for a reason. And she said, I should have done it. She goes, now I'm too tired, I can't do it. Because cancer makes you tired. So we don't want to be there where it's like, shoulda, coulda, woulda, and then, so let's try to get to it now. Let's try to do something with our minds now. It's possible.
What about instant death?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like we're having all this process with an illness, but in a car crash, it's no.
So with heart
usually
attack,
there's no these 3 days also to.
well, with heart attack and accidents, you die, instantly. So the visions are going to happen like that. Those subtle visions, boom, they still happen, but it's really fast. And it really depends if the consciousness has left the body. It's not clear that the consciousness leaves right away. Sometimes it does, but sometimes not. But the person's dead quickly. But that inner experience is still happening. It's just happening really quickly. And so the person may, sometimes it's hard, but you can still maybe keep the body if it's really deteriorating, and probably the consciousness is left, like that. And I remember with my friend at the hospice in California, we got a message at 2.5 days from Rinpoche. You can now call the cremation place. She's gone. She went, and she looked like she went. It's different. The bodies are slightly different if you're around. It seemed like, and so we got a call, and that was fine. So let's finish there, and I hope it does give you something to think about. And I know that there is a little somberness when we talk about death and dying, that it kind of comes into that place of, oh, this is uncomfortable. So look at that a little bit and see if you can adjust something in your life, that let it motivate something in your life to get something more ready that'll support your mind in a positive way. So I'd like to dedicate any merit, any positive energy we've created from this time together in our lovely, wonderful 3 nights that were so fast. I'd like to invest that in our being able to live very, very meaningful lives. So we will have no regrets when we die, that we will have peaceful deaths, and that it will also help us, that we will have imprints in our consciousness that will help us move along a path in any life to become enlightened as quickly as possible, because so many are suffering. And as an enlightened being, we're completely unlimited in how we can best serve them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you're interested, I have a few cards left if you want some info from my website. And the FPMT site has some very interesting education programs. Thank you.